After 2,000 hours of playing Satisfactory, it's time to say goodbye to early access and hello to 1.0. This will be my final video on this save, so I think it's time for a factory tour. Everything that you're about to see is just our starter factory. This tour will be done mostly with global illuminations turned off, considering I never really got to the stage where I managed to unlock lights, because essentially this is all you'll be seeing. Do you know what? Let's start from the outside. This is the outside shell of our project. It is rather simple, but let me explain it. This is our main dramatic entrance into the project. However, underneath this is actually something quite interesting. Essentially, this is all of our conveyor belts. Originally, this walkway entrance was never supposed to be here, and everything that you're about to see was never meant to be inside of a building. Whenever I build a factory in Satisfactory, my projects are always outdoor based. This is one of the first times ever I have built an actual building in Satisfactory, which I think is kind of weird after 2,000 hours. But let's talk a bit more about what we see here on the right. Because essentially, everything that I designed in this building was done using the Mark I miners, and we've only just unlocked Mark II. So I was planning on converting all of these conveyor belts to produce more things from the miners, and then bring it along here, where it will then continue through here, past our main factory onto an extension. But because update 1 is just about to come out, I decided not to do that and to focus all my attention onto making more content for you guys, and more 1.0 planning stuff. So essentially, this is what we have, and it of course can be used for vehicles, for trains, for whatever you like. But this is just the design I came up with. Very, very simple stuff. Nothing really that crazy, but I do quite like it. And that's when we get into the actual factory itself, which again is quite dark because we have got lumen turned off. Well, no, to be fair, illuminations actually is turned on. This is what the interior looks like with global illuminations turned off. And as you can see by the literal space elevator in the background that we'll talk about in just a second, you can clearly see this area wasn't really designed to be placed indoors, because originally, this area out here with all the conveyor belts was supposed to be like an outdoor area, because our main logistics is actually underneath everything that you can currently see. And when we come down here, we've also got a couple of our miners in here as well, because we are sat on top of quite a few nodes, which I'm sure you'll see throughout the tour. But I think the best place to start is probably right here with our assemblers. Because with our assemblers, we are producing rotors and reinforced iron plates, which is the most complex thing that we currently make in the server. Right inside this small little hut looking thing is where we can actually see all of our reinforced iron plates and our rotors, which is quite nice. Some of them split off and they go towards this direction, which you'll see a little bit later on, and the rest just goes into here. And don't worry, I will show you the logistics because it's pretty crazy, but I'll show you that at the very end of this room tour. Here we have a very small iron plate production, as well as whatever that is. And again, as you can tell by these outpost towers, this was supposed to give us advantage of essentially the view and all the scenery and mountains around us, but now it's just the interior of a build. As you can see, the roof is actually quite tall. This is not a small building by any means, but it produces everything we need it to. And now onto one of my favorite views of the area, and that is of the space elevator dome. So rather than having a completely flat roof, I tried to make this slightly higher elevated, and there is of course that nice little angle, which again I made a video on how to make these angles, which definitely makes the build look a bit better. And I don't necessarily recommend placing your space elevator inside of the building. As you guys know by now, it wasn't supposed to be inside of a building. It looks pretty decent with global illuminations turned on as well. And here is another angle of that space elevator, because over here, we've got one of my favorite additions to the entire world. And that is this random glass panel that does absolutely nothing except to give us quite a nice view out here. And I mean, wow. This view is so... I didn't add a glass window. I don't know what happened. I think the recording lagged. I don't know what happened there, guys. Let's go back to where we just were. 3, 2, 1. Edit this part out. And this is one of my favorite parts of the world, and that is because of the view. I absolutely love the view of this area. And it just feels quite nice walking around this area and just getting, a nice view of the outside, which I'll talk a bit more about later on. A nice view from inside the factory with that nice dome going around the outside. And it's a really pleasant overall, scenery. Which, I mean, I did not create this scenery, but I created the glass to look at it at least. Even with lumen turned off, I still think it looks quite nice as well. And the next part I'd like to show you is just down here. And of course, it's our awesome sink area. I've spent way too many hours down here, mostly because of biomass, which, if I show you this clip on screen, you could probably see why I spent so much time down here. But yeah, this is where we sink all of our awesome sink stuff, which comes from down there. And do not worry, I will definitely show you what's down there in just a second. We also have like a very random downwards area, because I was, again, in theory, going to continue this places to go further and further down, because this wasn't supposed to be inside of a building, so that was going to be completely fine. Then I changed my mind, 1.0 got announced, and I was like, okay, well, screw it, I'm going to end the series here and see what happens next, essentially. But if we come up here, we've now got our hub, and this area I'm quite proud with, because it's very, very simple, but it does everything I need it to. Tons of storage, and I've color-coded it. White means it's got stuff in it. Yellow means, well, in theory it should mean it hasn't, but I've got an absolute ton of rotors I just don't need anymore. And of course, inside the actual hub itself, just regular things that you get inside of a hub. I think we actually finished, yeah, okay, we did manage to finish Tier 4 and Tier 3. Now, of course, the hub comes with something which is up here. The pods. This wasn't meant to be built inside, so I've had to create a nice hole in the ceiling to allow the pod to escape without crashing into my factory, because again, I had to. Furthermore, I'm actually very happy with how this area turned out, because originally what I was actually going to do was I was going to bring this wall up to here, and then this wall along, like, if I can get the angle, like so. So it would have cut out this entire corner. But now that I've done this, I don't think I would have, liked if I would have done the other way. I think this does look quite nice. I was going to build like an outpost there, but I think just leave nature to be nature. And it looks decent just the way it is. Just to the left of that, again, I've added this garden area. This is definitely something I like to be doing more in 1.0, incorporating more nature and scenery and just green energy vibes into the game. Even though the whole point of us being here is to destroy the world, I still quite like doing projects like this. Just north of that garden, we have this outdoor area. We've got a good amount of glass. It's not really like the most complicated design in the world, but it's fairly simple, and it gives you a nice, another really nice, oh dear. We'll get onto that building in just a second. But it gives you just a nice view of everything else, including this, which I think we probably should talk about. So when you come along the bridge from our hub and come along here, you actually get to our blueprint designer. Originally, I was actually going to build this building around this concrete foundation, but I felt like it didn't really match the vibe. So what I did instead was build our blueprint designer inside of a smaller building, but then I've kept that building outside of our actual main factory. And this doesn't do anything. The only reason I actually made this was because originally I was supposed to be working on steel production in this world, but again, 1.0 got announced and I stopped working on that immediately. And in total, I spent about 8 hours designing a bunch of blueprints I actually never bothered using in the end, so that was a bit of a waste. But let me just take you down here into the actual blueprint area itself. I quite like this. I think it's nice and cozy. It does the job. I've never really designed anything like this again, because normally I just place down a blueprint and that's that. But this time I have gone a bit out of my way to make it look a bit nicer. You can come down here, which leads you to the awesome sink area that I showed you guys before, and to some more biofuel converters. Biomass burners, that's the one, Jesus. But you can also come out of this door right here, go along this corridor, and you end up down here. So there's multiple different exits, because that's one thing which, as you'll see in a minute, I actually quite like doing. I like adding a lot of entrances and exits, so it flows quite nicely rather than having to like go back on yourself 10 times to get from point A to point B. Secondly, you can come down here, which is where we had our temporary steel pipe and steel beam facility. This was an absolute nightmare to make, purely because when I placed down these foundries, I actually went through the roof, and I had to redesign the bit above, which again I'll show you in just a minute. But another entrance to this place is through this door, random wall, out here, and oh, we're back over here again. So again, it's like a little circle, but one day I might want to go through there, the next day I might want to go through here. Well, there's not really much to talk about in there. As you can see, we've got a couple more miners up here. Originally, this area, which has like most of this concrete foundation up here, I originally deemed as useless because it was just miners, it was quite rocky land, and I didn't really like it, but I've managed to turn it into a biofuel maker, which actually did work out very, very well in the end, and we managed to make thousands upon the thousands of biofuel from this. So in the end, it was quite efficient, and I did quite like it. Coming down here now, we've got the continuation of this space, and I might as well show you the MAM very quickly. This was quite a weird design. In fact, most of this area, except for like the outer shell which I've made recently, was actually done very, very early game. Which is the reason why you see a bunch of these basic walls lying around and why I've made walls out of conveyor poles. Because I didn't have concrete, we didn't have concrete foundation, concrete walls, we didn't have any sort of like architecture unlocked except for this. Like this type of flooring, the random foundation, and this type of wall. Which, to be fair, I probably shouldn't have done that. In 1.0, I'll probably be waiting until I get at least concrete to do a few of these structures. But either way, this is our MAM thing. Gets the job done. A bunch of outpost towers around, again, because I wasn't supposed to be building this inside. And I believe these 4 smelters are our only copper smelters in the entire world, because the rest of it goes into here, which then produces our copper sheets, wire, other stuff, cable, and that's about it. But as you can see, it's pretty much all fully backed up because I'm not really using anything. And again, I have incorporated some more nature into this project because when I was destroying everything for biofuel, I still wanted to leave a couple of nice areas around, just again for nature, because I think it looks quite nice. You can't really place down trees except for like the Fixmas events, but again, I've done that because I think it looks nice. You might also have noticed that everything around here is done in segments. This is our copper segments, so this has its own little area up here. The status has its own little area over here. So I did try and keep everything in a certain place that was producing a certain item. Mostly because I thought this looks nice and neat, it makes sense to me, and again, overall, I just quite like that. But when it comes to update 1, I still want to be maintaining this somewhat, but I also want to try and incorporate more of a mega factory into the game. So I will be doing this, but on a much larger scale. But I do think this looks quite nice. Do you guys like this layout idea of like, you know, putting iron ingots over there, then spacing it out from that, then spacing it out from this? Or do you guys just cluster everything together, then have some like floating pathways that go in between everything? Because again, personally, I do quite like this design, and I probably will be sticking with it. So I hope that you guys like it, because you'll be seeing a lot of it. I do quite like this iron ingot maker. It's extremely simple, as you can see. Iron goes into smelters, smelters comes here, iron ingots comes out, then iron ingots goes back into there. It's quite neat. You can still see some logistics up here, which, again, something else I actually do want to change. I want to have more logistics being shown, because right now I'm about to show you my logistics floor, and I think this is my favorite part of the entire map, and this is just a small glimpse of it. And the reason as to why I like it so much is because it has identity, it has passion, it has energy, and it really has that factory sort of vibe that I just really, really like. And this is probably one of my favorite views in the entire map. And if you have seen my series about this, you would have already seen this. But just watching the iron, the limestone, the copper, everything just maneuver around is beautiful. Also, you can probably notice I tried to make it so that none of the actual items clash with each other. Like you can see, it doesn't really touch like the conveyor belt above. So everything twists and winds through each other to get from point A to point B to point C to point D. And some of it does look a bit weird, it looks a bit silly. I'm very, very happy with the way this area in particular looks. Even though it's the messiest area, it's still very neat. I know where everything goes, and I'm very happy with the outcome in total. We can even follow it around here a little bit. We've got some copper sheets going miles over here for something. We've got a ton of screws being made, which I feel like screws is like the first item you mass produce in Satisfactory. Of course, you could say iron ingots, iron rods, I mean, even just, you know, a little bit of iron plates, but I feel like screws, for me at least, is like the top thing that you do mass produce. And the reason why everything's come to a standstill here is because we've already got a full container of reinforced iron plates and rotors. But I must say, I do definitely love the logistics area down here. And the best part is, you can go from anywhere on the map to, well, anywhere of this factory, should I say, to the other parts, just by going underneath here. Like, for example, as you're about to see, we're going to come around here. We've now got our garden that I showed you a bit earlier on. You come back up here, you've got the space elevator. You then have the biofuel area over there. You've got the hub. But before we leave this starter factory behind, and that's what this really is, it's just a very basic starter factory, I want to show you one final thing I worked on but didn't manage to finish. And that's actually the continuation of this sky bridge. Because the plan was to increase this bridge all the way to the other side and have it overlook the waterfall. And then down here add some sort of build or something, I don't know, but we didn't manage to do it. Also, as you can see, this looks quite weird from this angle, because I was supposed to be continuing this pattern somewhat over in this direction. Maybe it would have looked slightly better, but unfortunately, again, we couldn't get that finished. I do want to try and do something with this pattern in 1.0, because I feel like this could be quite cool for like a an entrance to a mega project. So have one of these on this side, another one on that side, then have like a main structure in the middle. It could be interesting. But now it's all dark, it's all spooky, because it's time to go through this little beam of light, get shot through there, and it's time to go towards the second part of this factory, and some may even say the best part. I wouldn't say that, but here we are. This is the second part of the project, and this took me longer to make than the actual starter base you've just seen back there, and that's purely because I punished myself. Not in a bad way. The thing is, I kept on adding things to this project. Like, originally, all of this wasn't supposed to be here. I can explain that. I promise I can explain that in just a minute. My channel logo on top of this tower wasn't supposed to be here. In fact, half the things you're about to see weren't originally part of the plan, but it makes the build look nicer, so I did it anyway. So come one, come all to our tour of our coal tower. And it is pitch dark, obviously. Luckily, if we come down, oh goodness gracious, yeah, if we come down here to the lower floor, we can actually get a nicer look of the interior. And I would say it's fairly basic. This was actually created during the time where I had essentially no quartz crystals or anything to really make signs. So this is what we went with. And this is what the area looks like with fog turned off. I do quite like it with fog on. It actually adds like a decent atmosphere, but it's also a bit more difficult to see. In regards of what there actually is in this tower, there isn't really much to view because everything is just, well, what you see here really. There's a staircase going up, which goes up quite far. This thing's very, very, very tall. It then leads you to your first logistics floor where you get to see the coal miners and you get to see the pumps and everything going up and down to make sure everything's working. You then get to our second logistics floor where you can see the coal going into the actual coal generators themselves to make sure power's all working and that the water's all flowing. And then you get to our third and final and perhaps most important logistics floor. Despite that, we can actually get some pretty cool views from the very top of this thing, so let's head up there now. Before I added this hypertube, it used to take me 2 minutes, 3 minutes to walk up these stairs. Now I just go into the hypertube and it takes a few seconds, luckily. And here is our first view. You can somewhat see the starter base in the background, which, to be fair, the actual footprint of this build isn't really that small. It's a decent size. Again, it's just a starter base. I would like to work a bit more on my roofs. I feel like that's definitely one thing I need to work on, and just like roof work in general. But again, for my first proper attempt at like a wide build, a building that wasn't supposed to be built outside, I'll take it. You can really see everything from here, which is awesome. But we are not done just there, because we are currently inside of my channel logo. It's a sentence I didn't think I'd be saying today. Now, this is a slightly better view. It's a bit more cursed inside of here, but we can actually try and go to the very top if we use these ramped foundations up here. Yeah, I did have to create 2 of these, so That was double the pain. And I think it took us like an entire stream to make this thing, so that was fun. And a complete accident as well, by the way. But eventually you get to the very top and you're so high up, everything's just a pure fog essentially. So, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh, no. Okay, well this is another view of all the water pipes going into the building. I think it looks really cool. It took me hours to make. Oh! I mean, I do quite like the way this building looks, but we're still not done there. Because here's a quick look at the logistics. We can see the pipes come into here. Pipes then continue in this direction where we built several different blueprints for this. And eventually they then all meet in the middle. Some of them come up here. Others then come round to over here. And in total, I think we're dealing with about 22 pipes, which is quite a lot. I think 11 of those pipes actually were supposed to be transporting water across the world, but again, we didn't get to that stage in this factory. And this thing's not really a small build either. And on top of where the pipes actually go into this main building, I did add like a nice little stairway on the outside, because I just thought it would be decent. And again, this is like the main part actually in here is where the power is being made. So the next part of the map I would like to show you is actually over here. This is the exterior of it right here. As we're just about to enter, blink! Yeah, this thing didn't take too long, only a few hours to make. And essentially, walking wise, this is it. But of course, there's a lot more underneath. So inside of here, you can see all the coal going up, which I must admit is very, very satisfying. You then come out of here and you get a nice view of this area, but like a different sort of angle of it at least, which I still think is quite nice. Regarding how we actually get the call, even though no one is ever going to see this except for you guys, of course. But even though hardly anyone is ever going to see this, I still wanted to make it look nice and neat for my own personal pleasure. Again, I'm not really a YouTuber. I just upload content and, you know, I play this game to please myself. If it pleases other people, fantastic. In life, you're always going to please yourself before you please others, and doing small things like this generally makes me happy. Which, by the way, thank you for everyone that has subscribed recently. You guys have been really smashing it. Here's another angle of the water pipes. Now, the final part of this tour is right on the horizon. Here's another angle of the massive pickle. And again, luckily hypertubes do save you quite a lot of time. I'll most likely just be sticking to hyper cannons when 1.0 drops. And here is the second area with the exact same roof design that we saw on the previous build. Except I do prefer this area because it just looks a bit nicer. It gives it almost like a zoo sort of feel. Because of course you got the hogs there in the middle, the Mercer sphere, and this alien thing. But if we go underneath here, you can see where all of our core is actually coming from. Because again, I love adding logistics floors apparently. In regards of the actual core miners themselves, I've got the exact same layouts that we had on the other ones, so nothing too special over there. But one thing that is slightly more unique to this build, other than of course, oh my game froze again, nice. But of course, one thing that's quite unique to this build is the Olympic logo, because I believe I finished making this during the Olympic closing ceremony, so I built that as like a memoir, I suppose. Maybe if I revisit this world in 4 years, I can have a deja vu moment. Anyway, that would just about have to do it for our factory tour. Honestly, I had absolutely tons of fun making this thing, and I'm just happy I didn't do anything stupid at the end of the video that would completely ruin the vibe of the fun. And of course, a massive thank you to Mao Mao, Jan Machejko, Chaos Rising, and our brand new latest member, Low exclamation mark, for all becoming members on the channel. Thank you very much, guys. But without further ado, click on the left or right of your screen to see more of my content, subscribe if you like Satisfactory, and I will see you on the next video. Godspeed.